Hi, everybody. My name is Brianna Wise, and I am a stylist here based in Los Angeles, California. And recently, I've come to put together these webinars weekly. They weren't even going to be weekly, but they just happened to help a lot of people, so I wanted to continue to do them. And today, I have Antoinette on here with me. She's like a lot to me. A aunt, a friend, a mom, like everything to me, everything, guys. So she's helped me out in so many different ways when it comes to my career and personal life. And I thought that it would be great to have her on here so that she could talk to you guys too, and you can get some of the information that she's given me. Today, we're going to go over just her journey, how she started. And at the end, if you have any questions, make sure to hit us up in the Q&A and we'll answer the questions. Make sure to pay attention, take notes. One, so that we don't have to answer multiple questions, but at the same time, just make sure that you're taking in the information, you're retaining it, and that you find some value in it. So I'll introduce Antoinette, and she can let you guys know who she is.
Well, thank you for warming my heart at the very beginning of this, Brianna. My name is Antoinette, and some of you know me as Antoinette, the costume designer, and some of you know me as Antoinette, the stylist. And I've been very fortunate to have been both in my career and in my journey along this line of fashion, film, costume, and the world. It's our world, it's our passion. So I've dabbled my feet in both, and hopefully I can answer some of your questions today.
So let's start off with, because you started as a stylist first before you got into costumes. So what was that process? Like, how did you decide that you wanted to be a stylist and get your foot in the door?
Well, before I was a stylist, I was a baby model. Sorry. I was a model, and I was doing a shoot with a photographer in Toronto who liked what I put together because I used to style myself. Mm-hmm. And he said, would you style for me with some model testing, creatives? And I said, absolutely. And I loved it. Absolutely loved it, because what I enjoyed about styling myself was the ability to transform myself with clothes and looks. And it was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And the fact that someone else recognized what I thought was just, one, trying to save money, and two, doing something I enjoyed, that it could be a career.
Yeah.
I thought that was amazing. And so that suggestion to help a photographer is what made me realize, wow, I could actually make a living from this.
Yeah.
The transition was really hard because at the time I'd been modeling in Toronto from about, I think I was 16 till my mid-20s, all through university. And I got as a junior stylist, I became a junior stylist at a new agency called Platino Agency. This is when Platino first opened in Toronto. So I was assistant to people like Deborah Berman, and people used to look at me and say, you mean Antoinette the model? So it took a minute to climb over those barriers, and worked really hard, did a lot of creatives, a lot of interning, a lot of volunteering off the top, just that people could see that I was taking it seriously, and it was really important to me. Okay. So if you're asking me, how did I start? I started making the transition from one world to the other, but hitting the ground and knocking on doors and saying, hey, I know I used to do cataloging here last week, but can I come in and assist some of your stylists, or just shadow, help, make coffee? I just really put myself out there that I was willing to do whatever it took to learn.
Okay. And then how would you say that transition from styling went into costume design? Because even though they're somewhat the same, they're really not the same at all.
No, they're not. There's a lot of similarities and there's a lot of crossover, but they are different. I jump in several years in the future. Now I'm a mother and started to want to have more of a consistent paycheck. The stylists out there will understand terms, 30, 60, 90 days. It doesn't help when you're trying to pay a nanny and a babysitter. So I was very fortunate, and the Torontonians will know Izzy Camilleri. Izzy Camilleri, I used to assist on her fashion shows when she used to do more of a fashion line in Toronto. And I'd help designer, fashion stylists do her collections like Deborah Ferguson, Ian Hilton. And she recommended I reach out to a costume designer named Delphine White,
Mm-hmm.
and ask her if she needed help as a buyer.
Mm-hmm.
And at the time, a lot of people think Toronto just became a booming film town last week.
Mm-hmm.
Toronto's been a very viable film community since the early 80s that I'm aware of.
Mm-hmm.
And when I went to work for Delphine as a buyer on a TV series, this was in like 1990, early 90s, and she'd already been a very well-established, nominated costume designer.
Yeah.
And may even have won awards by then. I have to look it up. But I went to buy for her, and between working on her TV series and then assisting Deborah Berman, who had started to design for Don Allen, a director in Toronto, I was buying for these two shows and making a weekly paycheck. And it was like, whoa, this is wonderful, but also stability. And it was great because my experiences as a stylist, I knew the vendors, I knew the stores, I knew the showrooms. And what Delphine really appreciated is my fashion background helped balance and brought something fresh to her very character-driven TV series.
Yeah.
And then what I learned from her is shopping and buying for characters, not for models.
Right.
Yeah. So
Very different.
yeah, but that was the beginning of my transition into film, is buying for other people.
Okay, so something you said when you first started answering that question was the consistency of it. And also, as a stylist, it is a lot of freelance work, especially when you're developing your own business, whether you're assisting or interning, because that person may not be working every day of the week. Mm-hmm. So you have to know how to manage your other jobs that you have, even if it's not styling. And then also when it comes to costume, yes, it's more of a consistent basis on a longer term. Mm-hmm. A part of me felt like it was like a 9 to 5 as far as the hours work, instead of styling and having a one-day shoot. You know what I mean? So it's definitely time span different.
Absolutely. There is very much a weekly schedule with film for the crew. Costume designers, their heads of departments tend to be a little bit more, I should say we work all the time. Let's be real.
Yeah.
You've been there. I work all the time. It's when it's your baby and you want the most, you want to give it your all. Sometimes Monday to Friday is when you have to interact with your crew and your, heads of department, producers, directors, but your off hours are when you can actually spend time, researching or working on catching up or invest in that few minutes in connecting with your craft.
Right.
But you're right, with styling, I mean, I was just talking to someone yesterday about, the difference with commercials. Some people really love the fast, quick, 2-3 maximum a week. I mean, I had amazing training. I used to assist a gentleman named Jimmy Hanrahan, who was a head stylist at MTV, and I'd work with him when he came to Toronto. Mm-hmm. And these would be massive commercials that we'd be prepping a week, 2 weeks, shooting 3-4 days, multiple scenes, multiple characters. But again, last minute casting.
Yeah, always.
Stuff on the fly. And, there's sometimes last minute casting with film, but generally you're on a schedule where you have some idea of this is when we're going to shoot, this is when we're going to get cast, this is when we're going to do our fittings. There's a schedule. Fashion and film, there are times that schedule, you don't have the time to work it out. You've got 2 days. You need
Right.
that 500 series jumpsuit tomorrow, you know?
So that goes to a question that popped in my head about mood boards. What would you say the difference in creating a mood board for a artist compared to a mood board for a film would be?
You know, that's a very interesting question. It depends. I mean, there are times I've done a lot of, in the beginning of my styling career, and it was an amazing job. I did a lot of artist development for EMI Canada, where I'd work with their new artist, and we would develop looks for their press kit. And the press kit usually was anything they were sending out for promos, for PR, their album covers, inserts, press releases, all that stuff. So we do multiple, like maybe 1 to 2 days of a shoot, and we do multiple images. And those, generally, it would be working with the A&R and the photographer and coming up with ideas of the theme or the look we were going to work on. You know, sometimes they come in and say, we really like, you know, how this artist who is working right now looks, and can we get similar ideas for them? And part of my job as a stylist was to not only help them achieve that, but also be able to say to them that, well, Ashley Simpson is this size and this look, and the artist I'm working with is over here. So what we have to do is find a way to give you that inspiration without being too literal, because that look can't work on this. So that's where mood boards come in, because I can visually show them examples of how I can help them, you know, with something that they feel is very commercial and very in right now in terms of a look, but adapted to their artist. And to be quite honest with you, I do that in film too with mood boards. You know, it's all about inspiration and trying to make everyone aware, not wanting to be this literal, that it is an inspiration, and it's color theory, it's texture, it's ideas, it's, you know, how do we, you know, have that amazing Gucci coat that I'm using on this mood board, but adapt and find something similar for the artist or the actor I'm working on.
Okay, that's good. That, you know, that popped in my head off the fly.
Mood boards. Just a little background, you guys. Brianna has been amazing. I've been on location, having to fly in to do an interview as both of us are doing mood boards on the fly as I'm flying out to present them. So she's very, very, you know, well versed in Antoinette's mood boards.
Thank you. So, okay, let's shift into now mindset and then go back into costume. What do you feel like the mindset is for someone who's been in the game for a while, and also someone who wants to get their foot in the door?
When you say mindset, are you saying how you feel or what you want to, when you join, you want to become a designer?
For me, I feel like mindset is more so like determination, being consistent, having a focus towards knowing what you want. Because I remember when we first met, you said you need to pinpoint exactly what that is you want to do. You can't be all over the place with it. So as far as a mindset, also just knowing not to be discouraged if things don't work out.
Well, this is what I can speak to, and I'll use, if you don't mind, I'll use you as an example. Sometimes people are not clear on the different worlds, and I blame that a little bit on Hollywood, and I'll explain why. Because sometimes the worlds overlap here quite a bit, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's just there's different job distinguishing between styling and costume design. And I can say that because I've done both. And sometimes I've done both at the same time. And I was hired the first time to design a series because they wanted someone with a stylist background to
Mm-hmm.
do the type of show they were doing, which was about a band. So if I'm hearing you correctly, being hungry, being passionate, wanting to be, whether it be a stylist or wanting to be in film and design, when I say to someone, no, narrow it down, because you can spend your time in Los Angeles, for example, PAing for years, when what you really want to do
Right.
is be with a photographer in a studio, creating something on a stage that you're collaborating and shooting a project together,
Mm-hmm.
which is two different things. Then I would say to you, other than learning about vendors and where to go and having structure, which you can get with PAing, I would recommend coming out of the film world and going into the showrooms and assisting stylists and the rental houses to learn about
Right.
period clothes, because there's more types of styling than just celebrity styling
Absolutely.
and fashion styling. I was very lucky to do a very diverse range of styling, which I feel helped me with film. But I mean, I don't want to confuse people. I just want you to understand that. And you're talking to someone who I claim to be ADD, doing everything, learn everything, because I think it's important to absorb as much as possible, but
Mm-hmm.
start to think about what makes you excited. Is it the thought of dressing someone, putting together a costume or a character or telling a story? Or are you you can't wait to get to New York Fashion Week and it is your life?
Right.
They're different,
Right.
lots of crossover, but what's your passion?
Right. And I think that's a big part, like in my book, is a reason why I listed all the different types. Because when you told me that, I was like, you do need to pinpoint what type of styling job that you actually want to do. Like, there are so many different ones. There can be pros and cons in your minds, whether you know it's a pro or con. You just need to know what you're getting into before you get into it, kind of thing. So I
Yeah,
think it's important to know.
and I'm speaking again from experience. When I first started, it was doing a lot of photographer stills. I worked with a lot of models, doing a lot of creatives, working with photographers. I mean, my background as a model was I did a lot of catalog, I did a lot of commercials, and then runway season, that was it. New York, Toronto.
Yeah.
So I kind of knew a little bit about each world. And then one of my mentors, Deborah Berman, I assisted her for years, and she did a lot of commercials. And then I kind of segued into music videos. And once I got into Revolver Films and did Floria Sigamundi's first music video for, with Don Allen, Blue Rodeo, and Chaos, and other, artists from the 90s, I fell in love with telling the story.
Right.
And that's when I started to pull out of the fashion and the stills and start to create, because I realized, hold on a minute, this is what gets me excited. I'd always loved fashion. I've been collecting Vogue magazines since I was a kid. But this was something new.
Mm-hmm.
And, you may transition as you grow, especially
Right.
if you're coming out of schools like FITM and Parsons and other, Ryerson Fashion School. But you'll eventually start to see what excites you or what you enjoy.
Mm-hmm. That's good. Everybody, I just want to say hi again for coming in. Thank you so much. If you find that this is valuable, please let us know in the chat. And if you have any questions, hit the Q&A at the bottom so that we can address them after, okay? So let's see. My next question. Okay, not even from those. You talked about timepieces and costumes and creating a whole story.
Mm-hmm.
What is your starting point for creating and developing your story? What is the first thing that you do?
Research.
Yep. Everything. You guys understand, research is everything.
Research is everything. everything. And I'm shocked at how many people don't know how to research, or don't know how to source, or how to dig, or layers. I mean, and you're talking to someone who also sometimes gets stuck and have had to reach out to other designers. It's like, oh my God, I have this character. I don't know where to turn. I'm not finding it. And sometimes it's just that one image that will take you down a rabbit hole.
Yeah.
But it's always research for me.
And it feels good once you hit the nail, though.
Yeah.
Sometimes you can be researching for days.
Yeah.
And then when you have that one photo, you're like, this is it. This is it.
You know, something I should share, because people automatically assume research starts with you've landed the job and now you've got your story, whether it be a commercial. You could be researching as a stylist, a print job that requires a theme.
Right.
But before you even get there, I always say to people, remember to research the people you're meeting with. Who are you interviewing with? Mm-hmm. That is very important, because looking at not only from a stylist point of view, the photographers and their styles and their looks, even the makeup and hair, who sometimes are contributors if you're not involved in creating the whole look.
Yeah.
Look at the company. Knowing the players and their style and work for film and television and for fashion is very important, because you can come in with this amazing, you worked on it all night, didn't sleep, and it doesn't connect because it's not their style.
Right.
And you know what? It's sometimes it's all about what you bring to the table, but I always say it's smart to know who you're bringing it to.
Mm-hmm. That's important. Definitely important. That was a good one.
Thank you.
So what would you say is the biggest lesson you've learned throughout your journey? Or it doesn't have to be one.
Well, I'm gonna, something that just came up because I've been helping someone else with an issue is relationships. Knowing your relationships, not just relationships with the people who hire you, you know, whether it be photographers, directors, producers, referrals are amazing. Referrals could be your best friend. But also you're only as good as what you can produce. And if you don't have that relationship that you can pick up a phone and ask someone, especially on a commercial where it's an overnight or 24 hours, or if you're doing a film in a remote city or country, that if you can't pick up that phone and have a vendor, a designer, someone, an assistant help you, because we're only as good as the people we include in, I call them my tribe. You know?
Yeah, that's so true. You definitely, you can't do it all by yourself. So it's good to have that strong foundation. That's what I'm learning now too. I mean, yes, you have a few people here and there, but it's so important to have a tribe, for sure.
Yeah, and when I use the word tribe, I mean, I've got to give a shout out to my Toronto tribe. You guys have saved my ass so many times for so many jobs. It's like, oh my God, they just switched the rep at this agency. Who is it now? Or, oh my God, I need somebody to go to Thunder Thighs and pull costumes and ship to Morocco. It could be whatever, but you know what? I hope I'm good to my people. I hope I'm good to my vendors, because we can't do this alone.
Right.
You know?
Mm-hmm.
I think there's a saying that PA may be your producer 10 years.
Oh yeah, and that also has to do with how you treat people on set too, because you never know. 2 years, maybe not even 2 years, what role that person will have, and they'll remember you.
But not even that. It's just respect. That background, that person that you're speaking to disrespectfully because they're only a background performer, that's somebody's friend. That's somebody's mother. That's somebody's child. It absolutely chomps me when I see that, because they're people too.
Right.
You know? And I would hope you would treat your, lead cast, whether it's a commercial or a film, the same way you would treat the background performers.
Right.
They're all people.
Right. Absolutely. That touched my heart.
Oh, I keep saying that could be your mother. Don't talk
Right.
like that. Right.
So, okay, let's drop some stuff that you worked on so people know who you are.
What?
So when it comes to fashion styling, which was great with Superfly, I love the long coats. What else? Do you want to talk about some timepieces that you've done? Some timepiece films?
Yeah. So first, let's just rewind to Superfly, because there are films which I'm able to go back to my roots, like Superfly.
Right.
But yet there's no way I could have done Superfly without my training in film. Because not only was it really fashionable, it was still character driven, and it was a big stunt movie.
Right.
So
that was a real stunt movie.
So there's that, but they're all characters to me, whether they're dressed fashionably. That person wouldn't have been dressed so fly if it wasn't specific to that character.
Right.
And I mean, some of the stuff that is older and you don't see on my website or resumes, I worked with James Earl Jones on this beautiful little film that we shot in Muskoka, Ontario. And it was just lovely, working with people like that you have so much respect for their craft, and they have so much to offer. And it was great because we were away on location shooting in Muskoka, and I was able to bring my son for the summer. And he'd speak to. I never seen Jacqueline so still or so quiet until he would speak. But then I did this really fun indie film. God, I can't even remember the name now. But it was with Giancarlo Giannini and Omar Sharif. And it was a co-pro shot in Toronto with this Iranian filmmaker. And Giancarlo Giannini was sewing off the back of my truck. His father and grandfather were tailors. He could sew. And he had the most meticulous hand sewing. I mean, I still remember him teaching me how to do a slip stitch properly. Yeah, I know. It's wild. One of my favorite films, and I'm so proud of this project, won several awards in the US, was called Jewel. And it was one of the last films that Farrah Fawcett did. And it was Farrah Fawcett and Cicely Tyson. And the first time I got to work with Miss Cicely Tyson. I don't ask for many autographs. I think I've asked for 2 autographs in my career. Cicely Tyson was one, and James Earl Jones was the other. And again, it was a period piece that spanned 40s, 50s, and 60s. Yeah. So yeah, I've done a few period, and then I had to remind myself to come out of that world and do contemporary for a while. And yeah, I just like to mix it up. I like to be diverse and change it up all the time.
Yeah. So you've done films, but you've also worked on Netflix. So let's talk about, do you think there's a difference?
None.
When you're working?
Other than one's called streaming and one is, because the reality is, I mean, I worked, Hold the Dark was Netflix, and it released theatrically. There was just a release all day and a night. That film was supposed to be released theatrically, and if it wasn't for coronavirus lockdown, it would have been released first before it went to streaming. So some of the Netflix originals are not just straight to streaming.
Okay, I never knew that. And I was wondering, because there's so many movies that were supposed to come out, and now they're like streaming online. I was wondering how that worked.
Well, for myself, and I can't speak for other creatives, but I'm working on a movie right now that's Netflix, and it's no different in terms of the prep, the budget, and
Right.
everything we're doing. It just so happens that our studio is Netflix.
Yeah. Do you enjoy working on films with? Is the time frame to flip a film quicker when it's through Netflix?
No.
Okay.
No. I would say the fastest movie I've ever made was Superfly, and that was for Sony.
I have to say, I enjoyed being there. That's actually where we met, guys. We met on the set of Superfly with one of my friends that's like a sister to me, Lex Scott Davis. And we clicked from then on. But that was so cool to be on set and to also see things that I never recognized as far as costume and it being, what did you say? As far as like
character.
having, no, where like you need to add patches for fire scenes or.
Oh yeah.
What was that called when you?
Wow. Which fire scene? We had to get special treatment, the clothes specially treated for one of the fire scenes. Right. Yes. So we treated the clothes. I think there's a scene with the snow patrol where it blew up. There's also a scene at the end with Lex, which is probably the one you saw, where they're coming out of a burning building. Mm-hmm. And it's about multiples. We had clothes that were for when she wasn't near fire, and then we had clothes that were for when she was near fire. So we had several versions. I think with that particular costume, we had 5 or 6 versions of the costume in different stages.
Right.
From clean to the very end, which was scorched and burnt and ripped and stuff like that.
Right. So that's so important to know too, because as a stylist, sometimes you don't need all of those options. Yes, you need to have backups in case, but having extras on set or stunt doubles who have to wear clothes too, mm-hmm. It's a whole nother world. You know what I mean? So it's more options that you need, which is important to have resources and know how you're going to get the clothes. Could be a little bit different than you just going into a PR showroom to pull one outfit.
Yeah. I mean, I found as I was segueing out of fashion, and I still do some, but when I was starting doing commercials, my commercials started to get more story driven, more character driven. And, I was watching one of the CAFCAT award with one of the designers, Marie Tremblay, and she was saying, she's done short films and commercials that were like little mini movies. That all of those elements may still be. I remember one of the last commercials I did in Toronto. I don't even know how I managed to pull this off. It was 3 segments, and one of them was a speed, 500 series. They were doing a race around the track, and I got booked the Friday, and we shot it the Monday. And I literally had to figure out how to build these costumes, and that's where relationships come in.
Right, absolutely.
Pick up the phone, having it made in Hamilton, sent out to Toronto, getting the rental house to open up on the weekend so I could pull and prep and, and that, but what I'm saying is some of what you speak of with doing film, with multiples, the big custom bills can be done in fashion too, just in a very truncated, smaller version. And I think what is just really important for people to get away from this talk from me is there's so much options in the world of fashion and styling than just what is the bread and butter of LA, which is celebrity styling and dressing actors for red carpet. That's just one spoke in a very large wheel of different types of jobs that you can do as a under the umbrella of stylist.
Right. And I find that a lot of schools don't talk about that. Really, it seems like all they talk about is merchandising,
Well, I took merchandising in school in Toronto, and I don't know what it taught me. I'll be honest with you. I mean, I learned about color theory. I started, actually, before I even got into styling, I was working doing, textiles for a shoe company out of school, right out of school. But the thing is, what you learn on the job, I was just recommending to someone that, along with merchandising, which is good to get the base, volunteering on the weekend, interning, PAing,
put yourself out there.
Balance it out and get you out there so you can understand what it is they're talking about. Because I personally think that so much of these merchandising courses are so geared to merchandising a display.
Right, in stores. That's it.
Stores. And I did it. I came out of my course being able to do a window display, which then led to the job designing fabrics for shoes, doing display at the Bay downtown. But again, for those who want to be a stylist, it teaches you how to dress a form and how to, but real bodies are not always sample size or mannequins,
So we're not cracking on you if you took merchandising. We took
merchandising. I would always recommend it. It's just knowing that if
you need more outside of just that.
If you're going into retail, like I have a very dear friend who took merchandising with me, but her parents owned one of the biggest retail stores in Oakville in Ontario. Mm-hmm. It was an important course for her because it helped her to understand all the mechanisms of that particular business.
Right.
So it has its purposes, but I'm just saying.
Yeah, definitely. But it's just that there are also so many other options out there, and just knowing somebody that you can, either connect with, work with, so that you can learn all the different types of styling is so important to take that back. So my last question to you before we jump into the Q&As, how has quarantine life been for you?
Busy. If anyone says they're sitting around lounging by a pool, I am so jealous. It has been amazing because it's given me the opportunity to do things like this, mm-hmm. and mentor several people. I've done a few IG lives, and again, speaking to our craft. I'm very passionate about film. I'm also very passionate about fashion and styling because I find sometimes it gets a bad rap. So I just want people to be aware that the term is there's an umbrella for, just like there's many jobs within the umbrella of costume design, so many formats, so many, some people may love TV series and doing sitcoms, and others may prefer just doing period. I like to do a little bit of everything, but mm-hmm. some people like their lane. But the point being is, this has been a great opportunity to give back, if you want to say that, teach. And I'm also working on a few passion projects that are coming up. I'm doing this great project for Canada Goose, which is, satellite lessons that will be uploaded to their social media coming soon. Mm-hmm. And I'm also working on this, I'm Jamaican, and I'm working on this project for the community. It was based on getting a request from a young wanting to be a designer, but not knowing how to get there. So I've invited 2 other Jamaican designers, and we're going to do a course. Not a course, we're going to do a roundtable conversation virtually and tell you about our journey, tell you about how we came to be where we are, because all 3 of us have done the same as I have, which is work in fashion and work in film. Right. And I think it's really important to share that those options are available to everyone.
And also, I'm trying to get you to hop on board with me with teaching, because I think it's so important for people to know all the aspects of really fashion. I mean, it's fashion styling, it's costume design, and I mean, you're definitely a force. So,
Hi. Hi.
yeah. Okay, so let's hop into these questions. Oh, and so this is what I need to work on. So the reason why I said she needs to work with me is because I do have an online course where I teach all the different types of styling jobs that there are in the business development aspect behind everything. So if you're interested, you can hit me up in my DMs. My Instagram is BreeYStyle, or you can leave me a chat in here. The recording will be available to you. I'll send it to Antoinette. I will also have it. We may have some clips available too, so that if you missed it or if you have a friend who's interested, this information will be there for them. So let's see. Questions. This one might be kind of deep. This one is from Eugene.
Mm-hmm.
How does a costume designer transform a character description into a convincing visual narrative through wardrobe? That's deep.
No, it is deep, but I know exactly what they're asking.
Okay.
The character, when you have a script and your characters, part of my job is to help the director tell his story. And the writer writes these characters into the story. And when I read a script, if I can't start to visualize who these people are, it's very hard for me then to tell the story. I've actually turned down a few jobs where I just couldn't see it. It just wasn't coming to me. But when they start to come out of the pages, and when they start to come out of the pages, they usually come out of the pages already dressed. Like I start to see it. What is then harder for me, and sometimes it's hard and sometimes it's not, is then being able to show that.
Right.
This is what this character looks like. And usually that's where mood boards come in, illustrations come in. And sometimes it's not just my idea. Sometimes it's in collaboration with the director, the producer, the studio, the actor. Like, depending on what it is, you will get all that feedback.
Right.
But if it's just for an interview or a presentation to the studio or to a director or even an actor, I'm working on a film right now with Idris Elba, and I had to, for his character, show him the arc from the beginning of the story to the end of how he would transform from one in, over the time period of the film.
Yeah.
And I did that with visuals. And then he came back with feedback. So then we worked on it because, he had ideas, the director had ideas, the studio had ideas. So my illustrator was very happy. He did lots of illustrations.
Right. That was another cool process that I got to see with you too, is the illustration behind putting something in your mind or putting a photo out there on a person digitally and then bringing it back, like their whole outfit already there. I'm like, how did you do that? That was cool. I had never done that before.
With the film I'm working on now, I think one of the biggest compliments I've gotten ever was doing the camera test and seeing some of the crew say, "Oh my God, they look like they just walked right out of the illustration."
Wow.
And let's be clear, the illustrations, I get really worried when people take illustrations so literally that they want it to be exactly like it is on the page, because sometimes it's a direction. And putting someone into a 3D version of what's on paper doesn't always translate.
Right.
But this particular movie, my director is he's been living with this for like a decade, it feels like, and has taken his, riffing with him, bouncing off him, talking and taking notes, and then going back to the illustrator, sharing that. coming back and then getting more notes and going back. And then by the time we were like, we love this illustration, trust me when I tell you, it needs to look exactly
like that.
Like
after all that work, it should.
Exactly.
All right, let's see. This is a quick one. This is from D Ford. Do you know how to full on sew before becoming a costume designer?
Well, I can't.
Right. I can't do any of that stuff.
But I will say this. I will say it's very important to understand. One of the things, the assets that I have is I come from a family of sewers. My mother's a sewer. My grandfather was a tailor. I have pinned, draped. I know how to, I can look at someone pinning a garment for me and know that they're not doing it correctly. Mm-hmm. But that's just from experience of having lived with it most of my life. I do know how to do basic hems. I mean, as a stylist, starting out as a stylist, if you could not hand sew, if you could not fix a hem on set, do a quick dart, I think it's important. Like, I've been watching some, without calling any names over the last few years, series where people are having a meltdown because there's a hole in a hem. And I'm like, put a needle in a thread and sew that up. You've got to go. You know what I mean? It's like, you could be on the red carpet and your actors put their heel through the bottom of their dress. Right. Toupee tape only goes so far, people. Right. You know? So I think it's important to get experience in as many areas as you can. And if it means taking basic sewing courses, if you do not have a love of sewing, I think I was traumatized as a kid. I don't love to sew. I'm sorry. I think I'm good at what I do. Is it an Achilles heel? Yes. Can I jump behind a sewing machine and do a quick alt on a truck on location? Absolutely. But I come from a family of sewers. What I do is not considered sewing, you know?
We have a couple questions about unions. So let's see. Mm-hmm. How do you get into the union as a stylist for TV and film? So that's two-folded question because you'll I know you know.
Okay, so first, where's this person from?
Oh yeah.
Oh, okay. This is Tasha. Tasha, are you in
where are you from?
New York or in Canada or the US? So I'll speak to both. Tasha's in LA. Okay. So I'll be diplomatic. The rules here are that to get into the union, you have to work X amount of hours in rental houses, and as a PA, you get hours. And there's very, very strict rules here about what PAs are allowed to do and what they're not allowed to do. Right. This is the advice I give my PAs. I try to teach them as much as I'm able. I ask them to ask lots of questions, and I encourage them to do projects on the weekends, to volunteer, to do commercials, to do music videos, to do stills, to learn, to take classes, because they may be fortunate and get on a show where they can absorb and learn and ask questions depending on who they're working for, or they may get on a show where they're very conservative and they feel that they don't want to get in trouble by having you do jobs that a costumer from the union would do. Right. My thing is, if you're smart, if you're hungry, the resources are out there. Ask questions, and you'll know quickly whether someone's willing to show you, teach you. I know that getting paid is important, but there's also nothing to say with asking if you can shadow on, you know, I've had people come and visit so they can see, mm-hmm. you know, and you won't know unless you ask. Yeah. And also for recommendations of places you can go to get more experience. Toronto is a little different. There are more resources for training, like CAFCAD, like CAF Academy. You can permit with the unions and get, if you have enough hours and experience and references, you can become a permit with the union so that you can get more experience to then become a member. And I'm not just saying Toronto, I think in Vancouver. Cynthia, if you can answer that question, I think it's the same in Vancouver, where you can become a permit. And usually permits get into the union from doing non-union work and getting experience, doing commercials, getting set experience so that they can then use that to be getting as a permit.
Yeah.
So it's very different between Canada and the West Coast. I'm not as familiar with New York and what the rules are. You would probably know better than I would, Brianna.
Well, no, the one I know more about, I think it was Atlanta, and that's a work for hire state. So you don't even need to be in the union, and you can walk right on. But my experience working union here, like I can have 13, 15 years of styling experience, but if I don't have a union credential, then I can't even be on set to help one of the artists get dressed. So it's little things depending on who you're working with and how much information or how hands-on someone is that wants to help you. Mm-hmm. I think it's more important to just find the right person that you connect with.
Yes, and that's very important, is finding those people who, like I said, are willing to answer questions and help advise or direct you.
Right. All right, so let's see.
Can I just mention something? In LA, there are film schools that they do a lot of short films. And there are, Mandy.com is always posting, needing help for, I think the last short I did in LA was for the Film Institute, and Mahershala Ali was my lead actor, and my assistant was in the art department because I couldn't find a costume assistant. So contact the film schools and work on the shorts. Same with Toronto, you guys. The Canadian Film Center does amazing short films.
I mean, I feel like that's probably everywhere too. There has to be other film schools. So if you're somewhere else, I'm sure if you research and find different film schools or art schools, there are resources or projects that they're working on that you can assist with. I'm sure they always need help.
All Everyone in Vancouver, check Cynthia's answer in the chat. She has some great points there. And that's the famous Cynthia Summers, costume designer, y'all.
It was one that I saw, and it had to do with getting jobs. That's what it was. Mm-hmm. How do you land most of your jobs? I imagine now it's word of mouth and referrals, but many towards the beginning of your costume designer career. I think this is good because we talked about this a little bit yesterday when we were talking about agencies, whether, just getting jobs or just talking about that in general. So what would you say?
When I got my first job as a designer, it was from a referral. The costume designer who was my mentor, Delphine White, recommended me for a TV series where she knew they wanted someone with more of a fashion background. So that was a referral. And that's, again, relationships, which is 50% of how you get work. I shouldn't say 50%. It could be more for some and less for others. I needed to get an agent myself because I felt I needed that middle person to help me get in the door. Mm-hmm. And again, starting out as a stylist, the transition from model to stylist was rocky. Trust me, the transition from stylist to costumes was rocky. And especially once I realized that this was something that I wanted to make my career, but I didn't want to necessarily just do cute fashion, young, right. Basically in long format music videos. So I did get an agent, and they really helped to keep asking people to see me. Mm-hmm. And once I worked with someone and they were happy, they generally, if they had something they felt was suitable for me, they'd ask if I was available.
Again, yeah. That's a good one. I feel like most of the
answer just for film. I'm trying not to go down the rabbit hole of random questions. I'm leaving that to you.
Oh, you want to? You see some you want to?
I don't want to see them. You pick them.
Well, some of them kind of go hand in hand. So I'm trying to like condense them. Can you discuss a little bit more about working with an illustrator?
Okay. My illustration skills are basic. I can sketch. When I say basic, I'm comfortable with sketching to show something I want to have build, the technicals. And when I first joined the Costume Designers Guild, it was recommended to me, because they represent illustrators, that I use an illustrator when I do my work, because that's very much I don't know if that's right. That's very much how it's done here, where we have less of that in Canada. We tended to do our own, and it's of late that we're being asked to present the digital age. Pencil sketches are fine within department, but when they want to present to studio or to actors, or even for funding, if your project is just there but not quite greenlit yet, and we need to help put a presentation together to bring it home, they want illustrations that sometimes showcase the actual cast that they've hired or are holding for this project. And so there's some amazing illustrators that can digitally Photoshop and do all that is required they call them concept artists too, to help you put the look together. And finding that right fit with illustrators, they're like your assistants in a way. They have to be able to interpret what it is you are that is in your head.
Right.
Also, with the use of references, I've in the middle of the night with an illustrator, either beside me or at the other end of a FaceTime or the phone or Skype or whatever, and I'm showing them a pant from here, a jacket from here, I've dressed a Judy, like all the tools I can give them to help them develop the illustration that I need to sell the look. Right. And sometimes I'll do a rough myself first, so they see what I'm doing, and then that helps them go down the route. But there's no time even for me to do a rough.
Right.
Quit. It's gotta be quick.
A lot of times they want to quit. All right, let's see. This last question. This says, "Hi, Antoinette." Okay, this is from, I don't want to say your name wrong, Ether. I'm sorry if I said it wrong. It says, "Hi, Antoinette. I'm in Toronto, Canada, and I've been working on creatives to build my portfolio as a stylist for about a year now. I've also been volunteering with CAFT, what you said, CAFTCAD, Canada, yeah, and a wardrobe house. I'm very interested in getting into film, so I wanted to know what my possible next steps would be."
Well, if you've been doing creatives for your portfolio, my question to you is, how much experience do you have on set? How much hands-on experience do you have on a not a still set where photographer and camera, but working on music videos and commercials? I would say reach out to the stylists agencies, Judy Inc., Platino. I know there's a few others in Toronto, and ask that you could come on as an assistant. Reach out to stylists, established stylists that do bigger commercial type work, do short films, volunteer, put it out at CAFCAD that you're available to volunteer and you want to, I've gotten such great assistants and junior assistants from CAFCAD that are now union members. So put it out there is what I would say. And also do your research. Who do you want to work with? You know, when I first started as a stylist, I remember being really impressed with Deborah Berman's work and saying, I'd like to work with her. And I asked, I called her and I said, you know, can I please assist you? And then I assisted her for like 2 to 3 years. We lost Brianna for a second. She's reconnecting. Great. I'm glad I answered your question. But again, with everyone, knock on doors, you know, contact those agencies, the stylist agencies, contact the union, ask questions. CAFCAD is a great resource. I'm biased, I'm a founding member, so I'm constantly promoting it. But again, there's designers that Laura Montgomery has assisted me, Nola Chaders has assisted me. You know, I was contacted by a young man from Germany who was moving from Germany to Toronto with his wife, who was going to the University of Toronto, and asked me, you know, he'd like to get into film in Toronto. He used to work in film in Germany. And I recommended he volunteer with CAFCAD at, you know, movie wardrobe sale, TIFF event, and get to know people. And he did. And within a year, he was a member of the union and working with people he met at CAFCAD. So knock on doors and ask questions. Okay, Lacey, you have a great question. Lacey says, what do you think about period TV or film that includes items that were not invented at that time? I like historical accuracy, but I find myself being disappointed when I see zippers and gowns in 1800 period shows when the zipper was not used widely in clothing until the 1930s. Well, guess what, Lacey? You're going to hate my next film, and I'll tell you why. There is a big trend to having period-inspired projects. And one of the biggest ones that set the trend for that was Rain. And I know very much what happened on Rain because I know Meredith well. I was also, before she came on board, was up for that job. The thing about period accuracy is the people who hire us may not always want period accuracy. I did a pilot in Toronto called Haven that it was 1940s, but they wanted the fashion to be relatable. They wanted, when I say they, this is the Universal, and the producers wanted to know that the clothing could be picked up as a satellite collection by Banana Republic. That was their mandate, that anything I put on my talent had to be inspired by the 40s, but needed to be relatable to a high school student or something that a retailer like Banana Republic or H&M could do a capsule collection from. So although there are many, I'm trying to figure out there are many bonuses to being able to do the research and understand the base of this is the accuracy. This is how it would look if we were accurate. Then they're asking us to twist it and make it fashionable. I am doing a period film right now that is only period in that I've chosen the period between 1860 and 1890. It's a Western. My director and the producers are not hung up on period. They don't want to be locked to period. They would like it to be thematic, but be funky and fashionable and stylish at the same time. So I'm sorry, but that, look at, what is her name? Who is the biggest, I mean, she wins all the awards. and she did, you know, out of the UK, Redhead. Most of her films right now are inspired by period, but not literal. Sandy Powell, The Favorite, all those dresses were laser cut. The same with, you know, the other period film, Queen of Scots. All of those, that entire costume on all the characters made out of denim. Denim didn't exist back then, but she used it and used it well. I thought it was brilliant and very creative. So if you're looking for historical accuracy, I'd say maybe theater, unless you can work on a project that's what they are looking for. Look at Mad Men. Mad Men was very successful, but it wasn't period accurate. So Brianne Freeman is asked, do you have to have an agent to be a stylist or a designer? No, you do not. I've had an agent as a stylist in the past. And then at one point I had an agent for styling and film, but now I choose to any styling projects that I do that I'm not doing through my commercial agent with the agency I'm at now, I do on my own. But that comes from years of knowing what it is to ask for. As a designer, that is your choice. I find it's a very, very competitive market, not only in Canada, Toronto, Vancouver, Montreal, New York, you know, throughout. I find it helps to have an agent. Sometimes Sandy Powell's not available, so they turn and find out who else is in the agency. I was at an agency in Toronto where sometimes they call my agent and ask for, they need 3 costume designers, and she would be able to provide them with 3. So I don't think it hurts if you're comfortable or feel you prefer to do it without. That's your personal choice. Oh, let me answer this question. What are some of the resources you use to research? I have a library downstairs. I love books. I still collect books. I accept books as gifts. It's very rare that I do a film or TV or any kind of project that I'm not finding a resource book. I've been very lucky to be able to, on a fly, be able to go straight to my library of books, magazines. I like to touch. It gets the juices flowing. And then usually something will jog me or be an inspiration that I then come to the computer. Or the phone or the iPad, depending on where I am. I've been in front of my director and he's asked me a question and I've had to turn to the Pinterest app on my phone. Google's my best friend. Google is my best friend, and I use it a lot because then it will then take me to other research lanes, like, one of the photo libraries. Corbis used to be around. I think they're gone now. But the bottom line is research is really important. And I recommend highly to everyone here that you start to zone in on where you can get some of your best resources. Yes, so I've gotten to a point now where with my phone and my iPad, I have quick reference apps on my Pinterest, Instagram, Tumblr, on my devices, that if I have to come up with research quickly, then I have those resources at my fingertips. Cool. A little tip, people, if you're on Pinterest and you're doing something for a job, whether it be fashion or film, remember to make it private. Someone just got in trouble the other day because they had, and sharing with the director who thought it was private, and then, So it was collaborative, and then they found out that it was public. So know what to make private and what not to make private. And Dropbox, save your stuff. Find, ways in which, whether it's Dropbox or other, SmugMug or other resources, that you can save your albums and your references that you can go back to. Oh, Iris Simpson has asked, what is the difference between a costume designer and a costume buyer? And I think someone also asked, what is the difference between a buyer and a stylist? Well, I'm a costume designer. I'm a person who designs costumes for film and television. And part of what I have to do is take what is on a written page, a character on a written page, and help my director, my collaborators, help transform that character into 3D version. Like what they wrote, what they saw, help tell their story, and clothes help to do that. So I am creating a character with clothing, and that is a costume designer. A buyer helps me find those pieces, whether it's in retail, online, rental houses, or sourcing it where it could be in somebody's closet. But that's what a buyer helps to find those things, to help put it together. And one of the things I do to help my buyers is try to have as much tools, whether it's reference material, samples, images, whatever I can help them share, see what's in my head. Because sometimes I'll have a buyer say, I'm trying to get in your head. We're crazy. You can't get in our heads, but we can do whatever we can to help you understand what it is we're looking for, help direct you to find whatever it was we're looking for. And that's the difference between a costume designer and a costume buyer. The difference between a costume buyer and a stylist, they can be one and the same person can do both jobs, but the difference again is a buyer for costumes is working with the direction of the head of department, which is myself. I usually like to myself give direction to my buyers. And sometimes my assistant costume designer may give direction to a buyer, or depending on the project, a supervisor. But they're given direction and they're going out to get it. A stylist sometimes is styling their own project where they are the key. They are the person creatively coming up with that look, and they themselves have to find it, and they may have an assistant that's helping them to buy. So I hope that helps to explain, but they could be all one same job, or they can be multiple jobs with a costume designer and a stylist giving direction to their buyers, their assistants, to help them buy. Wow. What was the hardest film you had to work on? Superfly, because everybody can dress themselves. And it was very fast. We were doing it in Atlanta, and Atlanta has lots of clothes, and lots of fashion, but not necessarily multiples. And we were not pulling clothes that people would wear one time and I could take back or return, or very expensive labels that I could afford, because we needed multiples for everything. There was so much stunts in that film. There's very few clothing that I only had one of. That beautiful leather trench that the lead actor Priest wore, I had 7 of those coats. And they were, I was lucky enough to get them from Fear of God, but then I had to turn around and send them right back, except for 2. So right now, I'd say just because of the pace and the demand and the lack of resources where I was, I would say it was Superfly. I've worked on bigger, harder films, but sometimes what looks to be the easiest is not necessarily the easiest. Ether. As a stylist, how many creative shoots would you aim for on average before you can approach brands and designers to source from, other than buying from stores? That's a really hard question. I mean, it's relative. You know, the thing is that creative shoots help show what you're capable of doing. And what I felt creative shoots did for me was help me build relationships with photographers, help me build relationships with makeup artists and hair people who sometimes recommend you to photographers, help build relationships with modeling agencies who liked what you did for their models, so then they recommended you to photographers. The creative shoots also helped me get my first agent, which was Rosanna Platino. And then because I didn't have a lot of any work, it only got me into as an assistant or a junior stylist. I'm going to have to wrap this up in 5 minutes, you guys, for 5 o'clock. So Justine asked, how important is attending grad school? I'm currently an undergrad and on the fence about attending grad school. Justine, do a quick chat or question as to whether you're in grad school for film or fashion. And I'll answer that question before we wrap up. Yes, keep volunteering. There's nothing wrong with volunteering. I've had this argument many times where people say you have to be paid for your job and for your work. And I truly believe that, but some of this stuff, you guys, you can't get in school. And sometimes I remember doing a very small independent film here in LA, and they didn't have the budget for me to have any more than 1 assistant, 2 assistants, I think. And we were able to get students to help us from, we're able to get students to help us from FITM, and they were able to use it towards hours for their class course. So one last question. Oh, you're welcome, Brianna. So Justine is on costume design for theater. I don't have a theater background. No. It was not something that I gravitated to. So I may not be the right person to answer this question, because if you're not feeling that that is the direction you're going in and you're not sure whether or not to continue with it, I would reach out to people who have the experience of having started there, and if they felt that it's helped them in their career as a designer. If that's the route you want to go as a costume designer. I sometimes wish I'd taken more formal training in areas. I wish I'd had the patience to be, when my grandfather wanted to teach me to do construction and or taken it in school, but I'm constantly trying to teach learn or work for people and or take courses as I go. Someone just asked, do you use costume design software for script breakdown and sync on set? Absolutely. I am a big fan of sync on set. I started using the program from the very beginning. I think it's very resourceful. It has saved my life. Being able to see if you're on location. I was on location in Morocco while they were doing I was doing second unit in Morocco while they were doing main unit in Calgary, and I could see what they were establishing daily because of sync on set. It's a great way to organize your team, your department, all of the closets. before we went on hiatus, when we got word that we were going to have the lockdown, I got all my available assistants to start documenting and uploading images into Sync on Set for all the cast closets of what we had, so that I would be able to log on and see where we were at and if there was any holes, and be able to work from home. So it's a great resource for being able to access not only what is happening on set, continuity, a show has wrapped, I need to, find out if we're going to do any pickup shots, be able to pull up the continuity a year later because it's in the cloud. I love Sync on Set. So I hope I answered that question. Brianna Freeman, I only use Sync on Set. I know that there's been a few out there, others, and they seem not to last. So I don't know. I no longer use C-Plot. They just are not keeping up with the technology. So I'm strictly Sync on Set at this time. But if anyone else knows something, please put it in the chat. I'm going to segue to you now, Brianna.
You can see me?
Yes, I can see you. Hi. Welcome back.
So I had to log in from my personal account because my business one on Zoom is not working. I don't know what happened, but you held it down, and I
held it down.
So
and
I love you. I'm so grateful for you, and thank you for doing this. You literally did that for about a good 30 minutes while I was struggling over here, texting and calling you, trying to figure it out. But I'm glad it worked out, and thank you everybody that joined us. If you have any questions, you can always send me a message on Instagram. My Instagram is BRIWISE Style, and you guys can also hit up Antoinette. She's definitely there to help you guys. Yes, she's working. Don't hit her up too much, but if you do have a good question, I'm sure she'll be there to help you guys. So
I'll try my best, you guys.
Yeah, thank you so much for doing this, and I'm going to work on getting her into creating a course.
Not anytime soon. Not anytime soon.
There. So yes, thank you so much, guys, and I'll call you Antoinette.
Thanks, you guys. Bye.
Bye.